Go ahead and get started. Today's live webinar from Chalkline Sports is building your database through free-to-play sports games. And just a little bit about the Operators Edge webinars. Our team of operators and marketers, there's two things we focus on. Number one is experience sharing. Number two is data points that will help operators and affiliates build, engage, and monetize a sports betting customer base. The last Operators Edge live webinar was 3 reasons to bet on baseball for customer acquisition. Today, we're talking about building your database through free-to-play sports games. Next month, in May, our third Thursday live webinar will be converting free-to-play players to real money games. And I will say we have a lot of material to cover as we dug into this and thinking about the ways that we're building our database through free-to-play sports games. We recognize that there was a little more here than we anticipated. So today's webinar will probably run the full 30 minutes. We will have time for questions afterwards. So if you can simply use there's a question feature on the webinar. And if you can use that and let me know your questions, we'll make sure that Daniel gets those and we address those before we wrap up. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel for building your database through free-to-play games, and we're going to start with the legislative update.
Great, thank you, Joe. So a lot of states are looking to go live actually here in the past couple of weeks. Iowa is on the blocks in Indiana. North Carolina is looking to go live. Montana and Colorado and Missouri are all looking to legislate sports betting. We're also looking at a timeline for Pennsylvania to finally go live with their mobile betting. Obviously, they've legalized retail, but they're looking at within the next month they'll go live with their mobile betting, and that's really the holy grail for the industry, is for these states to not just legalize sports betting from a retail perspective, but from a mobile perspective, and that's where I turn our attention to our own backyard, which is in Tennessee, headquarters for Chalkline Sports in Nashville, and Tennessee is really looking at a unique opportunity where there are no tracks and there are no casinos and there's no bricks and mortar that the state can legalize sports betting to. So they're looking at a mobile only solution, and that would be they're wrapping up their legislative session by the 4th of May. So all things are pointing in the right direction for Tennessee to do that. And if they're able to get that done, I certainly think that there would cause some shockwaves, with the industry and show some of the states, that mobile is the way to go, and it can be done even in places where there aren't casinos and tracks. So excellent opportunity for Tennessee in that regard, and what I think we would see is the same things that we're seeing in New Jersey, where 80% of the traffic in New Jersey is, and this is done by GeoComply, and these are wagers that are being placed. I think this particular slide came from a March presentation of GeoComply, or it might have been February, where they tracked all of the wagers, and you can see right along the border, and certainly when we look at Tennessee, the surrounding states aren't necessarily looking at mobile wagering. So people coming over the border and placing their wagers really quickly and then heading back home is certainly something that we would see happening in Tennessee, not too dissimilar than what's happening in New Jersey. Okay, but that's just an update on the industry. Let's focus on building a sports bettor, a database of players. And the one thing that I get asked all the time is, where are my customers going to come from? And we'll dive into this, where you've got online and retail assets, and you've got owned, earned, and paid media. And we'll talk about each one of these and tactics that we're seeing used out there in the market right now. And so this is what we're going to be talking about over the next 15, 20 minutes. So let's talk about building our database through free-to-play sports. We just got back from Atlantic City, where our peers voted that Chalkline was the free-to-play gaming supplier, and certainly this is something that the team, we're kind of sports gaming nerds, and we're really focused on this free-to-play market and opportunity and the inflection point from free to play into real money. But it's certainly great to pick up the second award in a row from EGR in Atlantic City and to be recognized by our peers. So the big question is why free-to-play games? You may be aware that quite a few people are doing it, but let's answer that question on why free-to-play. So Barry is one of the thought leaders for ad agencies. He's been ad agencies his whole life, and he says, in today's technologically advanced world, a piece of content alone will not solve the problem for the client, as audiences are looking for new and better experiences. And what he's not saying is that they're looking for new and better advertising. He's saying that they are looking for experiences and engagement. And that's really what we're talking about here, where we're talking about the free-to-play games and the ability to engage and back your team. No better example from that than what happened last week, where Tiger winning. And then there's been a lot of political discussions and sports discussions, but everybody really wanted to back Tiger. Everybody was backing Tiger. And what free-to-play games allow, tracks, casinos, media companies, brands to do is to actually back Tiger, not just emotionally, but actually physically, and putting that that passion point down on a free-to-play game. And I'm not even talking about sports betting just in any way possible. We've done it through our own sites, and it's happening not just in sports betting, but in the media as well. And here it is on NBC during their EPL coverage, where people can place 5 perfect scores. They can win a $50,000 jackpot, and this is happening. It's a download an app. It is, so it's obviously on mobile, but this is also through the television as well. So it's certainly permeating not just the sports betting industry, but just all of the media is looking at engagement tools, and CNN is even getting into the fray, where you can predict the Premier League champion, and that's and they offer stories on a lot of different types of and subjects, but sports is one of those passion points that everybody's pretty uplifting about, and so the CNN offering some engagement around it, I think, is a good indication, and CNN are probably collecting thousands and thousands and thousands of email addresses or phone numbers or data points, and those might be, some of those data points might be yours. You might have those customers on your databases. It's just a function that they're out there collecting them and engaging with them on a level that the customers like to play with. There's been some recent research that's happened in the United States, and particularly around the American Gaming Association. Certainly over the past 8 or 9 months, everybody's trying to figure out who the American sports bettor is, and this is a sliced up pie chart. But just understand this: that there are 60 million Americans that have not placed a traditional sports bet. Yes, it might be with friends, or it might be a daily fantasy, or they might have pooled together, maybe gone on squares on the Super Bowl. But there's 60 million Americans that where this opportunity exists, and all 90 million Americans, of all those 90 million Americans, I'm sure that a lot of them are sitting on casino databases, track databases, media are already engaging with media companies, are already engaging with brands. And so it's just literally a function of identifying and engaging, and sometimes even educating those people around that process of placing a wager, and maybe to this point as well, and certainly from a casino perspective, 45% of that 91 million is from between the ages of 21 and 34, which is a very young demographic, certainly far younger than the average age is on a customer loyalty program. So let's talk about what exactly free-to-play games are. We've seen some examples, working in regulated gaming, not just in Africa but here in the United States. One of the first things that we did at Chalkline was obviously hire a lawyer that was just making sure that what we do is legal, and I think it can best be described as there is a gambling is defined as a stake, an event, and then there's an outcome based on that stake. What we do at Chalkline is we obviously eliminate that stake so that it's free to play. then obviously there's an event and there's an outcome, and that's why we're able to offer up to $1 million. We've offered $1 million prizes, throughout the course of our games creation. So requiring an email address or a mobile number, or maybe even a rewards number. It's legal in all 50 states. And we include live odds because we're concerning ourselves with providing some education, and what does that minus 110 minus 200 mean, and it's educating people around that around those events and tapping into those casual bettors. And when we look at what people are betting on in America, it's really football, baseball and basketball probably account for 80 to 85% of all the wagers in America right now. But what's really important sometimes is to tap into all that longer tail. And yes, of course, you can offer free-to-play games in those particular sports and those particular events. But it's also the UFCs and the golfs. And the tennis, and not just offering, really simple, pick team A versus team B, but you can do weekly pick'ems, you can do street games, you can create, season-long contests and leaderboards, and even integrate in-venue games, when you're creating events inside of your casinos or your tracks. And who runs these free-to-play games? Well, obviously the sportsbooks and the casinos and lotteries, and we've showed you some examples of the media. But brands are doing this, quite frequently as well. So a lot of people are trying to engage with customers, and certainly something that we're seeing a lot of in the United States. And we look at this at the calendar. The first thing we when we talk to customers, look at the big sports calendar and what are the events that are going to happen. And this is important. It's a nice starting off point. But what we're also concerned about is the regionalization. So some of these events might be relevant in Mississippi, but some of them may not. And so working with the geographic areas and what are the sports and interests for those customers, in those particular areas. And sometimes that might not even be the professional leagues. It might be a AAA baseball team, or it might be a single A baseball team. But those are the passion points that we look at and we try to capture in our free-to-play games. But this is a great starting point for all of our customers. And what we're laser focused in on is really collecting data and understanding personas. We've run regulated sports books in America, or horse racing business in America, and then sports books in Africa, and so we've dug in on customers and customer profiles, and we use that same analytics and that same mindset to really dig in on the where customers are coming from, personas, and we feed that back to our operators, so that marketing message and those engagements can be far more personalized. So we're we look at this from a framework perspective, and on the marketing side, there's the online and there's retail, and then you have your owned media, you have earned media, and you have paid media. And we're just going to go through each one of these examples one by one. So let's talk about digital and owned, and we'll just talk about some examples. The best one is if we look at Bet Chicago. Bet Chicago is a media site, regionalized. Obviously, it's in Chicago and in Illinois. Illinois is one of those states that are looking to legalize here in the next couple of months. And we offer free-to-play contests, and they get a lot of traffic onto their website. They don't always understand who those people are. So we use free-to-play games in order to collect those email addresses and engage with people. And we do that very relevantly. We do that with All-Star games. We give away tickets, and those tickets are usually to the Bears games. White Sox, Cubs. These are all the regional events that Bet Chicago uses in order to capture to build their database and to capture data around their customers. Here's a real simple example of it. It doesn't take very long for someone to play, but we obviously require them to do some terms and conditions. Sometimes they give away, $1,000 or $5,000 as a prize. Give us your email address, and then you can stand a chance to win. Second example is, when you think of a physical location that you own, you can't help but think of a casino, and this is something that we did with Tropicana in Atlantic City. Leading up to the launch of their sports book, we just had a lot of communication, in and around that casino, in the sports bars, tabletops, just making people aware that there is going to be a sports book that's coming. How can we collect email addresses and mobile phone numbers, and have them engage with, at the time it was, the Phillies, and it was the Mets, and it was the Yankees, and the football season was coming up. And it's also a good way, this isn't just necessarily, to collect a database of sports bettors, but it's just a good way to collect a database. And sometimes, people come in and they don't necessarily have a loyalty card. So it's a great way to start that process and to start that relationship. Here we're working with the National Lottery in South Africa, and they've got 9,000 outlets where they're offering the sale of lottery tickets. They're going to start, moving into a sports lottery type product, and that's a great opportunity for us to look at in order to capture data and information from people that are in those 9,000 outlets. It's a really, really big footprint, and one that shouldn't be wasted. I'll talk about sweating assets in some future discussions here. Earned digital media, best thing that comes to mind is social media. You have social sites, you have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram handles, and you're hoping that people come and follow you, and they do that, but you don't always know an awful lot of information about them. So it's about converting all of those social followers into email addresses. So they're actively engaged with you. They're following you for a specific reason. They probably do want to find out about ways that they can get discounts and know about upcoming events. Here's an example that we did with Ace Play Casino, where we tied in the football picks into their social casino so that they could earn coins to play the Ace Play Casino. Clay Travis is one of our clients. He's on Fox Sports betting show called Lock It In. He does a really good job of promoting his free-to-play picks, once you start to build, that rapport and that conversation with people on social media, sometimes they just do a lot of the marketing themselves. So here's a guy, on the right-hand side who obviously got all six of the picks, retweeted that, back out onto social media. So it's a great way for people to engage and sometimes to, share about how smart they are in sports. Let's talk about earned and physical locations. Almost every single land-based casino or track is going to be holding, various viewing parties, and those are great ways for you to invite customers in. You figure that if they're coming in to watch a sporting event, they're probably going to be a future sports bettor. And certainly around those big events, just offering free-to-play games in order to collect, email addresses and mobile phone numbers, and to refresh that database. Also, they're going to probably be bringing in unknown patrons and friends into that same environment. So collecting information on them as well, and just giving them a real simple way to engage with your brand. It takes us 5-10 minutes to spin up an engaging game around that particular live event that's happening. It takes the customer about 30 seconds to play it, and the prizes can be as simple as bed nights and unused inventory in your various properties if you're running a casino. So that's a great way for you to look at earned and physical. Moving on to paid. So once you start paying for media, we're really focused on online and paid, where we put Facebook pixels on all of the games. On all the games that we play, track all of the players. We make sure that we understand, favorite teams and favorite leagues, and then we can go find them obviously later when, if this is prior to a sports book, but it's always useful for us to just track as much information as we possibly can so that we can go back in and acquire customers. And on Facebook with our free-to-play games, we're looking at a little less than $10 CPA for our clients, and that's really what we're focused on. We certainly understand that whatever the cost per acquisition versus customer lifetime value is a critical KPI, and we understand that, having worked in the regulated gaming industry. It's certainly, collecting all of that information and focusing it organically and on paid programs, and making sure that when we do go out there and spend a dollar, we are as efficient about that dollar as possible, and we can certainly do that with a lot of the information that we collect, in addition to the geolocation that we're finding. On the paid and the physical, I think that every single casino that I've seen is sponsoring some sports event. And like any good CFO would say, you need to sweat your assets. Here's an example of Sun International. They host the NetBank Challenge, which is the African major. I think they give away $2 million to the winner. It's a massive event in Africa. It's a massive event for Sun International, and it gives Sunbet, the sports book, but it also gives the 13 properties a great way to engage with customers around that particular event. It captivates the country, and it certainly captivates the organization of Sun International. And so just go ahead and offer really free to play, really simple free to play games. Who's going to win? It doesn't have to be too complicated. And give away some type of prize that's usually, again, unused inventory, or you can give away some type of cash prize. But it certainly identifies all of the golfers, all of the golf fans that you'll have in your database, and certainly builds that aspect of transferring a sponsorship dollar into a piece of data or into a client. So what did we cover? What are free-to-play sports games? And we're seeing that these are happening across the board, and alluded to the fact that advertising is no longer good enough, that it's about experiences and engagement. We talked about the converting unknown web visitors into email addresses and unknown patrons into loyalty leads, but then also focusing on those social visitors and those people that you've earned as a follow, and trying to get information and email addresses from them with free-to-play games. Identifying patrons that come into all of the events. It doesn't have to just be sports events. It could be Dancing with the Stars. It could be cultural events. We can offer free-to-play games around those as well. Reducing customer acquisition costs on social ad campaigns, and we know that there can be quite a bit of leakage on marketing dollars in those ad campaigns. And then sweating that sponsorship spend, and sweating those assets around sponsorships, and making sure that you're offering a nice engagement, and trying to capture as much information around, sometimes sponsorship can be a little expensive, but trying to capture some email addresses and mobile phone numbers and data around the people that are involved and engaged with those sponsorships. So that concludes the brunt of the webinar. If there's any questions.
So Daniel, we've got a couple questions here. The first question is, which games are the most popular in your experience?
Okay. So I mean, obviously, the games that are the most popular that we found is obviously the Super Bowl games are quite popular. But we had a really interesting case study, actually, with Clay Travis, who has a very kind of male slanted demographic following. And we offered the Royal Wedding game, and that was a really good example of him just attracting a slightly different group of people, and we got tens of thousands of emails, and engagements from him just tweeting that out a couple of times. What we also find is that the more regional the games are, the more specific the games are, probably the more the more engagement we find. National games are great, and again, big games like Super Bowl, but sometimes honing in on the local teams and the local leagues tend to yield a much better result.
Another question here: who creates and manages the games?
Right, so we do that from A to Z. Most of our clients, the upfront, we sit down with them and understand, what they're looking for in free-to-play games, but soon after that, we manage that all A to Z. We provide pretty in-depth weekly reports on engagement, prizes and those types of things. But Chalkline certainly can manage that A to Z.
Question about how the data is accessed and who owns the data.
Right. And we get this a lot.
The player data specifically.
Player data, yeah. So the player data is, we're building these databases on behalf of our customers, and that's our customers' data. It's not Chalkline's data. And we do having built a system, for these free-to-play games that emulated a sports book. That we've used in a regulated environment. We understand, the importance of making sure that all of this data is safe and secure, and also that it's siloed based on each customer's data collection.
And then one question about regulatory, and just going back to the regulatory piece, and just any additional color you can share about working with regulatory agencies on free to play.
Right. So we're a licensed vendor in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania. And so, even in Mississippi, working with their gambling commission and around the legalization of sports betting there, it is illegal. It's licensed. I mean, you don't need a license in order to offer free-to-play games. But just having been in the industry, we just make sure that that the gambling boards are aware that we are free to play. And that we're constantly having those communications, with the regional or the state, licensing board in order to make sure that we, dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's from that perspective.
And we'll take the last question here is about pricing. What type of pricing, either assets or strategies, appear to work best from a data aggregation standpoint?
Yeah, we have this conversation, pretty frequently about, and I think a lot of people get wrapped up around wanting to give away $1 million prize, and we can do that, and we can ensure various prizes as well. But a lot of times, the simple is best, and so I think we hit the nail on the head with FanDuel when we were working with them, where we were giving away future site credits on their sports books. With Clay Travis, he gives away swag, he gives away T-shirts and hats, and he still commands tens of thousands of emails on his database. And from casinos, usually they have a lot of unused inventory. They've got specials or promotions in various sports bars. They've got bed nights that are just being kind of left empty, and filling that with somebody doesn't have too high of a cost. And besides, they'll probably spend money on food and bev and entertainment anyway if they do come and stay there. So those are some of the things that we talk to them about and talk to our clients about when it comes to pricing.
And then when it comes to integrations with a couple different touch points, how do you think about integrations when it comes to free to play games? Right.
So we have integrated with a few of the software vendors, actually the biggest software vendors in the United States that offer sports betting, so that the odds that we're showing is not different than the odds that are available on the particular sports book. So we integrate with them and make sure that the odds are correct. But also we just also integrate with CRM systems. And we have the concept of a loyalty program that we can pass through to those CRM systems as well. So sometimes people we're only collecting, part of the requirements of an account. Maybe it's just the email address and it's the state and it's the first name and it's the last name, but we can pass that through to the CRM system and start to build that profile for those customers and help them segment those customers, pretty seamlessly at the point of entering their picks and collecting that data. So we do see integrating with those CRM systems, and we're continuing to further integrate with the sports betting platforms, with the ones that we're working with throughout the country.
And then the final question: does Chalkline use the email addresses that are collected, which speaks back to the privacy and data ownership?
Yeah, no. So those are not our email addresses. We do not use those any of the data that we that we collect. It's all on behalf of our customers.
Great. And that wraps up our questions.
Great.
So
just to
go ahead.
Just to touch on the live and play is the future. We know that, and what we talked about today was we talked about capturing information on behalf of casual gamblers. We do know that the future, next 3 to 5 years, is really going to be about live and play. And Jason Robbins from DraftKings alludes to it, where he's talking about the natural stoppages for baseball and golf. And these are things that we're going to see happen as a natural progression here in the United States. We do know that 70% of all the bets that are placed in Europe are live and play, and they're all on mobile devices. And so, some of the discussions I was talking about earlier, where Tennessee is looking to just go immediately mobile, is probably the way of the future. And we do also know in the lower right-hand corner that U.S. sports bettors are going to be very valuable customers.
Great. And that wraps up our live webinar for today. So we are a leading provider of free-to-play sports betting games. Our platform is designed to acquire and engage customers at scale, and it's backed by our actionable Better BI tool. We work with a number of folks, which we enjoy. Our next live webinar is focused on the inflection point, converting free-to-play sports players to real money gaming. That will be on Thursday, May 16th, and will again be hosted by the Chalkline team. And thank you so much for attending today, and hopefully we'll see you next month with The Operator's Edge.